Hi, and welcome to another episode of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva, and as always, we always enjoy when we can have a program and discuss music and differing styles, and we're very fortunate today to have in studio Sylvia Mims. Sylvia is well, I guess a jazz singer first and foremost, but she's a little of this and a little of that, as she will tell us. Kind of known as the Unclassified Singer. Okay, a little R&B, blues, Bossa Nova, so all sorts of good things. And we'll be talking to Sylvia. She's got a new CD out, Where Lovers Live, and again, it's a kind of material encompassing the what's commonly known as the Great American Songbook. Sylvia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Larry. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Glad to have you here. Let's talk about the CD now. With the CD came out when?
It came out last November of 2014. Mm-hmm. I spent all of my last summer working on this project. And it's funny because this was not originally what I was planning to do. I wasn't planning on a CD at all. I believe it was the fall or the summer of 2013, I contacted a gentleman by the name of Don Trenner, who I had met during a Marilyn May, who's a cabaret singer, masterclass. He was the pianist that day, and he's this really wonderful gentleman who knew Nancy Wilson, who's my idol, and knew all these really great performers and people, and I found out he was the musical director of the Steve Allen Show, and he just... Charlie Parker he played with, Aretha Franklin, I mean the list went on, Lena Horne. So I thought, I'm going to call this gentleman and see if he'll record with me, but the recording was supposed to be for a competition that I was planning to enter in, and we were going to go in and record maybe 3 tunes and leave it at that. So we went to New York City to Sean Swinney Studios, nice gentleman who has a really lovely studio, and we recorded, and then we weren't too happy with it, so we went back. And then after a little while, I realized I don't want to enter the competition. And my voice teacher, Pamela Kuhn, out of Greenwich, she said, well, I think it's time that you do a CD, and you do the CD with Don. And since you've already started the recording process, here you have it. So I pondered and I thought, you know, that's a really good idea. But I scrapped everything that we had recorded. We probably had gone in maybe 3 or 4 times, and I scrapped everything because I realized for a CD project, you want to come fresh.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted kind of an idea, a notion, something to encapsulate the whole thing. I didn't just want this song because I really like it, this song because I've done this forever. You know, I wanted it to make sense, and that's when Where Lovers Live developed.
I'm always fascinated with, and of course a lot of times you don't know unless someone's putting out a retrospective, or you have the fortunate opportunity, as I have with a few people, but you know, not Springsteen or Dylan or people like that, but other folks in general. That interesting to hear the not only how a project comes together, but also again, people I think, oh, they just pick like songs at random. No, that when you start putting out like 3 albums in a year, as people used to do,
right,
then I think that's what happens.
Right.
Some may have kind of a sketch.
True.
But in your case, what you've done is you've basically put together a CD that's kind of a multi-layered complexity of love songs.
Correct.
Some happy, some not so happy,
Correct.
and so you have a theme again that is
Exactly.
kind of what you are pinning your hopes on. That's your project now.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully the listener gets that.
Right, exactly.
We can only hope.
I love ballads, so I wanted to do a number of ballads, so that obviously Where Lovers Live lent itself to that. And the title Where Lovers Live is actually a John Trenner original. He's written a number of songs that have never been recorded, performed with anyone. And so I selected Where Lovers Live because I thought that was a wonderful title and a way to start the CD, because that's the very first song, and a way to start the CD. And I viewed the CD as an apartment building. And you've got Where Lovers Live, and in each apartment you have a different story. And so you go through My Foolish Heart, which is the first meeting. The woman knows she shouldn't be getting involved, but who knows, maybe this could be it. You know, you go into songs like All Night Long. That's a woman who's yearning for someone, and in her dreams she manifests the perfect lover, shall we say. Then we go into some of those episodes and apartments where things aren't so hunky-dory, like Don't Explain. Don't Explain is a Billie Holiday tune, which actually she wrote the music, not the lyric. And that's about a woman who's involved in a relationship where her spouse is cheating. So each apartment, there's a different aspect of love.
So it's almost like kind of some movies. I'm reminded of like Neil Simon or Woody Allen, like one I know he did, New York Stories, where it's kind of like, what's going on in this window, what's going on here, only instead of visually, it's audio, but again,
it's musically.
And
Exactly.
as you well know, everyone's imagination, if they let themselves embrace it, well, they can interpret it their own way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I'm also married, and my husband and I have been married for 15 years as of this year, and so things have changed and transformed, and how our relationship was in the beginning isn't necessarily how it is now. And the last song on the CD, which is an Antonio Carlos Jobim tune titled Por Causa de Você, or Don't Ever Go Away, that one is really about mature love and recognizing that neither person in the relationship is perfect, but there's this deep love and respect for one another, and it's well worth it. And so that was...
I was thinking of Jobim. Again, we're planning on talking about influences and different things. I know that I got out of hearing some of the vocal stylings, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, I wonder if she's into Jobim. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so. I love Jobim. I love Brazilian music. I absolutely love Bossa Novas and Sambas, and in fact I recently had a performance at the Metropolitan Room a couple of weeks ago, and I brought in a Brazilian guitarist. And it was lovely. It was just so lovely. It was just voice and classical guitar, and it was just unbelievable. That's something that I've always wanted to do, was just have voice and guitar. It's so pristine. It's just pure. And we did some lovely bossas. It was a really
I had the opportunity about 8 or 10 years ago to see Sergio Mendes and, what was he called? I think it was called Brazil 2000 or something.
Brazil.
He changes with the decade.
Right.
Or in this case, the century. But
right.
But it was just, fabulous. And again, it was not the ladies that, again, I even had jotted them down under the guise of Brazil 66 singers, because some of your vocal stylings are just again reminded me of that, because it's not an in-your-face kind of vocal style. It's again, and it's not like a Billie Holiday. Again, it's certain ones. Some people are more like brassy, and others are more kind of subdued. And this is where Don, who you see here in the photo, a lovely shot of the two of you. It just again, some people play the piano, and then some people play the piano. And,
exactly.
Does that make any sense?
Yes, very much so.
I just marvel at that. It's just not. He's not a lounge guy that just
No, Don Trenner is someone very special. For one, he loves to play with singers. You'll find that not all pianists like playing with singers. They're very much instrumentalists, and Don is just the opposite. He feels most comfortable with a singer. That's why he's backed so many. He's been with Anne Margaret. He's done work with Shirley MacLaine. In fact, he was nominated for an Emmy Award with Shirley MacLaine's show. Lena Horne, Nancy Wilson. He's played with Chet Baker. I mean, the list goes on, but he works with singers, and he's such a good listener. His ears are just unbelievable. He hears everything, and he listens to everywhere you go and what you're doing. And I call Don actually my musical soulmate.
Absolutely.
Because we have a very special relationship. In all those rehearsals and the preparation for the actual CD, we became one in all those moments together. I'd go to his home in Guilford, because he does live here in Guilford, Connecticut.
I'm writing that down right now.
Exactly. He has a beautiful piano. I love that piano. And we just play together, and he'll listen to what I'm doing, and he'll follow me, or suddenly he'll change something. Sometimes he'll change the key in the middle of the song, and I'm just right there with him. And so I call him my musical soulmate, because we're just so in concert with each other.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Exactly.
Sylvia Mims, Where Lovers Live, joining us here on Studio 411 today. And also you do a radio show too, which is great, out of the Greenwich area, The Artist Space with Pam and Sylvia. And you mentioned your other significant equal there, Pamela Kuhn, am I pronouncing that name?
That's right.
Who's a well-known opera singer, and WCGH,
WGCH.
1490 AM,
Right.
and I'm sure online as well. Also,
That's right.
SylviaMims.com, where we can get that all the information in the world. Here's a shot, just to digress for a moment, of you guys
in the studio.
In the studio, yeah. So with a CD like this, again, you gave us a little bit of the backdrop about how one thing led to another. Always fascinated that, you know, how long it took. Now, obviously, it's a more pure effort in that it's not a lot of instruments. It's not like a rock band or you know, a large ensemble where there's a lot of things that have to be, you know, done. This here, most of the tracks, it's just Don, or is there like a bass player?
There's a bass player, Dave Daddario, out of who's also in the area, and I wanted to keep it stripped down because it was such a personal thing for me, and also Where Lovers Live, that's really something between two people, so I wanted to keep it really intimate. So most of the tracks are Don and I, and then we have Dave Daddario on probably about 3 or 4 of them, just to add a little backbone and to move the tempo a bit. And I like being in those sparse environments musically. That's when you know if you really can sing.
Yeah, because
so I
sometimes
enjoy
there's
that.
so much overdubbing.
Right, there's so much stuff that's going on. And most of the tunes, I'd say, we probably did about 3 takes. There was one in particular, we only did 1 take, More Than You Know. And that was, it's a funny story. Myself, Don, and my voice teacher, Pamela Kuhn, who's also one of the executive producers on the CD, we drove into the city. And it was the day after my husband had had surgery. He ruptured his Achilles heel last summer. And that just kind of threw a wrench into a lot of things that summer. And so I was taking on a lot more than I was expecting to. And so he had to have the surgery, and it was the day before the recording. And the surgery, I think he got out sometime like at 7 p.m. or whatnot. And I'm trying to take care of it. I'm like, should I go to the recording? And he's like, no, go. And I was just exhausted. So we drove into the city. We go into our favorite little smoothie shop to get our smoothies and little, you know, treats to eat while we're at the recording session. And then I just break down crying because I'm just so exhausted. I don't know if I'm coming or going. And I'm thinking, I have to record now. And so we're standing there in this place, and the clerk is looking at us, and Dawn Trenner standing there, it's okay, baby, you're okay. And then there's my voice teacher who's all decked out. She's always glamorous with all her bejeweled self and whatnot. And there's just the 3 of us, and we just look like a trio, you know. And then, okay, we calm down, we go upstairs. Everything's okay, let's just try something. And anyone who sings knows it's never easy to sing after crying. You've been sobbing, you're just a mess, your throat has all sorts of gunk. But I just stabilized myself, and we did More Than You Know, and we did it on 1 take, and the recording engineer said, that's it. You don't need to do it again.
That's amazing, and that's actually the longest track on the CD.
It is.
So that's another accomplishment.
It is.
Wow.
We included the verse in on that one, and that was actually a song that was introduced to me by Don Trenner. I didn't know the verse to it, and he got me to do it, and he found this beautiful low key to do it in, and I loved the outcome. So that one's one of my favorites actually on the CD.
Now, I didn't know that Pamela was also involved as the one of the executive producers. So it's really a well, not so newfound, but again, with Don, it's like a new family for you.
It is. It is a family. Yeah. Pamela Kuhn is actually my voice teacher. I still take voice lessons. I feel that that's very important to make certain that you have someone to keep you in check, because it's so easy to fall back into old habits. And I guess I should explain a little bit of background. For a number of years I was out in LA as a jazz singer performing, and I was always extremely nervous before a performance, because sometimes I didn't know if I was going to be able to hit a certain note. Sometimes it would happen, sometimes it wouldn't. I'd had a number of voice teachers and no one that was really quite adequate for what I needed. So when I moved to Connecticut 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to find a classical teacher, and I wanted to start from the grassroots, and I wanted to rebuild the voice in the proper manner. And so I stopped singing jazz completely, and I only studied the classical for 6 years. And I started with a woman named Teresa Vicario, who really did an excellent job. But then I started to get antsy, and I wanted to go back to that improvisational aspect that you can only really get in jazz. And I decided to start studying with Pamela Kuhn, who has the opera background, the classical background, but she's also so open to me doing what I do. And so we started working together, and since I've been with her, she's really pushed me to challenge myself and go out and do so many things that I never thought I would do, the CD being one of those things. So that's how that all came about. And now we host the radio show together. So
that's right.
Yeah, she's my co-host.
And Don's been a guest. That was and actually a two-parter. I heard part of it. It was excellent. Excellent.
He has so many wonderful stories to tell.
I'm writing that down.
Exactly. He's
Guilford. He's
exactly.
Sylvia
Definitely.
Will pick him up.
Definitely. He's unbelievable. The stories. You can just bring up a name. I mean, I think on the way, because I drove him into the radio show that day, and on the way to the radio show, I don't know, I said something about Tim Conway from the Carol Burnett show. And then he says, you know what? I'm kind of responsible for his career. And I said, Don, anybody I bring up, you know, or you've had some contact with. And it's unbelievable, the stories he has. I just love to listen to him because he's just a legend, and I don't think he's gotten the notoriety that he deserves.
I mean, I must say I wasn't familiar with him. Like, for instance, I knew like a Mort Lindsay, going back to Merv Griffin, and of course all the Carson people that were like his musical, like, you know, cohorts and Third Bananas, whatever. You know, Don was what he is. He's a pianist, but what caught my eye when I saw the clip recently that we talked off air with Aretha Franklin on the Steve Allen, his 60s syndicated show, not the NBC work of the 50s. Was right away, I said, okay, you know, here's a guy. I mean, Steve could play his own piano, but no, Steve wanted a guy that was going to not only handle that end of it, I'm sure, from the musicians, but again, a no-brainer, because Steve Allen, you know, was a raconteur. He wrote songs. He wrote over 1,000 songs. He published over 100 books. I mean, I can barely read one book, you know, with all the things I've got going on. This man was just a steam engine, you know, and I'm thinking he must have, you know, however he met Don, and we will find out in due time. But
you will. You know,
it's amazing.
Yes, it is. It is. No, Don is something else, and I definitely highly recommend you have him on the show. In fact, he just finished publishing his memoirs. It'll be out this summer, and we can't wait.
And I'll be like, how come Sylvia's not in it? Where's the protege? Wait a minute.
Exactly.
Page 205. What's up
with this? No, it's coming out. We're so excited about it, and I'm working on producing a show about Don's music. I'm trying to do something in New Haven, hopefully going into the fall, with nothing but John Trenner originals. And his book is called "Leave It to Me," which is the title of one of his songs. So I'm trying to produce this show called.
Plus, you've got all this Trenner family unearthed songs that are coming out of nowhere. I mean, you got when are you going back into the studio? You gotta mine this.
I know. I'm planning on doing another CD, but I'm planning to go back to LA to do it because I worked with a number of really wonderful musicians in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles just has a different feel. And this CD is so, in some sense, kind of maudlin because there's so much about love and whatnot, and it has a very serious kind of vibe about it. And I wanted the next CD to be a little more up and more. So I'm thinking I need to go back to Los Angeles and work with some of my old musician friends and just do something a little different to show a different side.
Sure.
Because there's so many facets to what I do. You mentioned that I call myself the Unclassified Singer, and that is correct. What do I say? My little motto is classically trained with a jazz sensibility and a wee bit of R&B. And that's really true. I like to do a lot of different things. I just love music, and I've always been told, oh, you're not a classical singer, oh, you're not a jazz singer, or, oh, you're not this, you're not that. And so I call myself the Unclassified Singer. I'm just a person who sings, and I love music. I am more of a jazz singer than anything else because I tend to do a lot more improvisational work, which you do not hear on this particular CD. I do a lot of scatting and
like
that.
Ella Fitzgerald, for those who are not quite sure what Sylvia means. Again, Ella being the pinnacle right there.
That is correct.
Sylvia Mims joining us here on Studio 411 for the hour, the CD Where Lovers Live. A comment from Don, again, that this should be in his book, but Sylvia has become a dear friend rather, because of her honest approach to life. The honesty shines through each song on this CD, whether it's a piece about new love or infidelity. Sylvia's rare gift of delving into what a song means to her and conveying that to the audience is exquisite. And as you said earlier, that's the kind of thing where, again, you have a game plan when you go into, as I'm sure you will when you do the next one out in LA, hopefully, is that you have a game plan in what you're trying to convey. You know, a subtle, not so subtle, you go in and then, hey, just hope the end results reach out and grab people and say, oh, wow, this is good. Really, you know, because we went through a phase, I always bring this story up with musical guests where, especially in the late 70s and then beyond, you know, you talked about recording a song, you know, tears and all in one take, you know, Beatles recorded an album like literally in a day and a half, you know, all of a sudden then you have bands that, you know, come out with a hit LP or CD now or download, and then it's 3-4 years. I'm like, you know, guys, what is going on here? I mean, it's just, you know, they must be looking for a hell of a theme, because I don't know what the delay is, and then they wonder, geez, why has everyone forgotten about us?
Forgotten, right?
And that's in more like mainstream media with genres like jazz, classical, opera. You know, people don't have in my opinion, don't have short memory. So they say, oh, there she is again, or there's so and so. The British, of course, in my opinion, are the best for that, because many years ago, after all the early rock and rollers faded from view here, and it's going on generation after generation, they go over there and they're like revered as gods and goddesses, you know.
This
so
is true.
Great.
Very true.
I'm going to forget her name, and I had it written down even in the car. Renee Alstead, if I'm pronouncing her last name. I just heard a track from her today. And I said, I have to mention it to Sylvia because it was a version of Skylark. I don't know if you're familiar. And then I learned something. Do you know who had the original hit with the song Skylark?
No.
Yeah, oh my God, almost 60 years ago, over 60 years, 1943, Dinah Shore.
Oh, really?
And I was like, you know, people in my generation think of Dinah as the talk show host, the variety show, you know, the whole thing. And she was back in her day during the 40s, 50s.
I knew she was a singer. I just didn't know that was one of
Renee Alstead is someone I just happened to hear today on a whim. And I said, wow. I said, again, there's someone else that is, you know, into the jazz scene or something resembling it. You know?
Right.
A couple of people, and it was so ironic when I walked into the studio to set up for the taping. On one of the monitors, who was on the monitor? My hand to God, but Peggy Lee, on one of the arts channels. And all of a sudden, I have it written down. Certain phrasing, and I couldn't name the song because again, I heard like snippets of each of the tracks. again, I hear Peggy Lee. So I'm sure you'll take that as
I'll
pretty
take
good
that.
praise.
I will. I love Peggy Lee, and it's so
Yeah.
funny you should mention that because before I came here, I was in a rehearsal and we were doing a couple of Peggy Lee tunes.
There
So
you go. Yeah.
it's too funny.
And it's amazing
No.
how, people, as the years go on, sometimes overlook her. And again, they're just, marvelous, marvelous. singer.
Exactly. There have been so many wonderful singers, and I mean, what I do is a culmination of a lot of different people. Obviously, all of us, we have our influences or what have you, but I think what the classical really did for me was help me find my own voice. Because now I have a distinct style and sound that's very much Sylvia, and I'm pleased with that. Whereas I think in the past, when I was out in Los Angeles, I was trying so hard, as many young singers,
Right.
to sound like who I idolized at the time. And so now I can honestly say I found myself. So
Good point. What advice would you give to, let's say, a 20-something-year-old aspiring singer? We'll say in the jazz field.
right.
What would you say as far as, is there something that someone who's a more veteran performer can give advice to say, look for this or follow your heart, or
Right. I would highly recommend finding a mentor. That is really important. When I first started, I didn't have one. I went out so blind and had no clue what I was doing. People often think when you sing, you just get up and sing. Oh, you have a nice voice. You can obviously just go and sing. No, no, no. There's so many things that go into this. There's microphone technique. You think it's something that people just take for granted, but usage of a microphone is really important in how you use it and what you do with it. You need to have music to provide in your own keys. You can't just go and expect everyone to know the key that you're going to sing it in and know how to transpose it from whatever they might know.
Right.
So I would say getting a mentor, someone who can assist you and kind of guide you along the path, and usually that's with a voice teacher. You find a good voice teacher, a jazz singer. Many jazz singers are voice teachers, and establish a nice relationship with that person who can give you some inside information before you go out into the big bad world and try to, form a niche.
Where would you say, and you might say somewhere in Kansas City for all I know, where would you say that jazz is at its strongest in this country? I mean, you mentioned LA. I know they have a lot of jazz clubs. New York, a lot of fabulous people, many of whom you would agree, I'm sure, are unknown to the general public.
Yes.
I mean, just folks that I've run across
Most
either
definitely.
via social media or different chance sightings, and all of a sudden like, wow. And then you listen to them and you're like, wow, these people are
exactly.
Great. They didn't just
Exactly.
come off of a talent show. They are veteran performers, making a living doing what they do best. But where would you say the strongest?
I mean,
Chicago, LA.
definitely still has a very strong jazz identity. There are new clubs still popping up, and I think it's stronger now than when I was there, funnily enough. So that's the interesting thing. And New York City obviously has a very strong commitment to jazz, but you'll find pockets throughout the nation here and there, but as far as my knowledge and where I've been, New York and LA are definitely strong locations for that. And then, of course, if you go to Europe and Japan is huge.
Japan just likes music in general.
They
It's
do,
amazing.
but they love their jazz,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people who go over there to work because there's work.
Wow, interesting.
And it's interesting that you noted on about the fact that there's so many greats out there that don't have the recognition, and that's very true. And there are lots of people that I know who work regular jobs, and they consider themselves the musician or the singer or what have you first and foremost, but they have to work another job because there just isn't work.
Right. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you went to San Diego State University.
I did.
Where do you hail from originally?
I'm originally from Pasadena, California,
Okay.
and so that's my
Rose
hometown.
Bowl girl.
Yeah,
There you
Rose
go.
Bowl, exactly. So that's my hometown, and then my father was a football coach, a college football coach, and we moved a lot. So you'd get a job, and for, a couple of seasons you'd be there, and then if they didn't win, then the whole staff would be fired and you'd go somewhere else, and that was how that worked. So people always say, you moved a lot. Were you a military kid? No, a football coach kid. And so my father was a coach at San Diego State University, and so I just decided to go to San Diego State. And then, funnily enough, initially I was planning to do a degree in broadcasting film. But then I took my first broadcasting class and couldn't stay awake because of all the FCC.
Now I'm starting to wonder why Pamela's on that radio show.
Because of all the FCC rulings, all the, that stuff was just, oh goodness. So then I changed my major, funnily enough, to art history. And so I have an undergraduate degree.
Isn't life interesting how it brings you back? Like, again, I did radio, I've told this story, so I bore the audience again. Did radio back in the Marconi days, and then all of a sudden, look where I wind up here doing, having the pleasure to have these lovely people that come on this show and put up with my nonsense, and again, so it's funny, life.
Yeah, that's how things go. Yeah. But yeah, I ended up with art history, and then I graduated. Thought I was going to go on and get a PhD and work as a curator, and then I realized that I'd have to wait for someone to pass away before I could get a job as a curator in the museum. So I just kind of let things be as far as continuing my education, and I thought, why don't I pursue what I've always wanted to do? And that was the singing. And so that's when I started to perform and meet musicians and go out and do whatever I could. I lived in San Diego at the time, and so there was, I'd go down to Coronado, the Hotel del Coronado, and I knew some musicians who played there, and they let me sit in, and I'd go down there regularly, and I met a really nice lounge pianist who played kind of a little bit of everything, and he played at these bars regularly, like on Monday and Tuesday nights. And so on Monday nights I would go to this bar, and he would say, learn some tunes and just come in and we'll figure out the key. So that's what I do. Every week I would learn, 3 to 4 tunes, and then on Monday nights I would go in and we'd figure out a key, and I'd perform them for the first time right there with the audience and everything.
And after 3 or 4 months, you've got a growing repertoire.
And that's
almost like a way that you wonder if he had you do that in order to almost like build that repertoire.
That's exactly what we did. Exactly.
Yourself. Yeah.
That was exactly what it was. So then I knew the key they were in. I'd performed them. The club owner then started booking me on Saturday nights to perform at that particular place. And so that's how things really got started. Because before then, I didn't have much of a direction. Then I found a guy who could write some lead sheets for me. Lead sheets are what jazz musicians use that just have chord changes, not all of the music written out like sheet music would have. And I started building my book with my songs and my keys.
Sylvia Mims joining us for the hour here on Studio 411, the CD Where Lovers Live. Another one that two other ones that came to mind, and again, I'm sure there's hundreds more, but again, Natalie Cole. Again, to me, not early Natalie. Again, it was more that pop.
Right.
Although she did do a song. Oh, what was the song she did? I've Got Love on My Mind. That was kind of like late 70s. Kind of mellow.
Right.
And it was good. And of course, quite a lineage. With her dad,
Nat King Cole, right?
And mom Maria, who I'm told, I believe, was still alive as of our taping here, but also was quite a vocalist in her own day. I think she did 1 or 2 albums after Nat's passing. But Natalie, of course, has just grown and grown over the years, a marvelous singer. And the other one, too, an odd one, but it just also a little Spanish influence, because like one of our cameramen is also named Carr, or Ken Carr here, but trust me, her name is not Carr. Vicky Carr.
Vicky Carr.
Who is, I believe, originally of Mexican descent.
Correct.
And, off the top of my head, I forget what her birth last name was. But again, another lady that recorded a lot of good stuff and just had a certain like passion about it. And I don't know that she she would probably be classified as a pop singer. I don't even know, a pop ballad singer.
Right, right.
But I'm sure in her time did, you know, some jazzish type of material. But again, just
And Don Trenner worked with her. He
there
has
you
stories
go. And
about
see,
Vicky Carr.
I did not know that. Talk about kismet here. Huh? I did not know. I thought of that the other day at lunch, and I said, and I wrote it down, Vicky Carr.
Yep.
And see, look at that, unbelievable. Now there you are again. I always ask this of guests that dress in lovely clothes. People, let's say, from bands like Manhattan Transfer, who I've met. A to the Bar, who's a highly respected regional band. They dress in these elaborate costumes. Without giving numbers, costumes, you know, run into a few bucks. I mean, you're not
They
wearing the
can.
same one, you know, like, you know,
They can.
every other night.
No, they can, and so you have to kind of do your research, and sometimes you're in a pinch, so you have to find something for something that's coming
Right.
up, so you just have to go and buy whatever you can find. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll try and space things out, and I'll look for deals, you know. Neiman Marcus and a lot of Saks Fifth Avenue, all of them, they have these great sites where they'll send you an email and let you know that for the next 2-3 hours we're having a sale, 65% off all our dresses.
So you're building your book even in that department. First it was the repertoire of songs. Now you're like, okay, I've got my aces in the hole.
So
you know?
you have to do
Oh,
do
sure.
your research and figure out how these work so that you accumulate some things prior to.
Yeah, and as we've seen in some of the clips, obviously if you're doing a brunch afternoon gig,
Correct.
or as opposed to an evening event, then
That's right.
obviously, you know, or you know, the Metropolitan Room you spoke of in New York.
Correct.
Had not had the privilege to go there, but from what I've heard, again, that's, you know, you got to glam it up a little
Correct.
bit. You know?
You do.
Yeah.
You do. And so that's what I do. People want to see you look glamorous, and
Yeah.
it's always nice to do it.
Getting back to the radio show that you and Pam do on WGCH in Greenwich, the Artist Space. Tell me, what's the running theme? A lot of musical genres covered in there?
It's titled The Artist Space because it includes a variety of different disciplines. It's not just music. Granted, the two of us are singers, she with the classical background and me with the jazz background, and so we do have other singers that are on, but we also have instrumentalists, we have visual artists, we've had we actually had a ballet dancer, Leanne Cope from An American in Paris, the lead, who was just nominated for Tony Award. We had her on the show, and she was wonderful. She's actually here in the U.S. for a year from England on loan from the Royal Ballet. And so we've had a bevy of people. We had Luke Hardy, who was an explorer / filmmaker, and he had recently gone to Antarctica and done an exploration.
Did the movie about the thing
Shackleford.
back in the early 20th century?
Right, Shackleford. Yeah, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So he did a documentary about the 100th anniversary
Right.
of the Shackleton expedition. And so we've had all kinds of people on. Just last week we had Florence Zurich, who was a sculptor. And we had Kate Manning, who's the author of this really wonderful book titled My Notorious Life, about an abortionist in the late 1800s during the Victorian era. And her book is actually in the works to become a HBO drama series. So that was exciting because I love to read. And I really enjoyed the book. It was really well written, and it was quite a delightful.
Well, you ladies will
interview.
find, as if you haven't already, and it's a blessing and a curse sometimes. I know doing this show, I've been blessed that I have more guests that thankfully would like to be on the show than not, but unfortunately you're always trying to squeeze people into
Correct.
slots.
Correct.
You know, so and again, it just
Correct.
you know, I have, as it sounds like you and Pamela do, wide-ranging tastes or things that kind of catch my attention.
Right.
And to me, I think that's the first kind of rule of thumb for me, is that if it's interesting, then I think, you know, we can turn it into, you know, make for good programming.
Exactly.
Or people say to me, well, what's the program about? I said, more on the guests end, but I call it the art of conversation. Other than a little media thing here where we've got some pictures to kind of keep us interesting, it's a throwback, as I'm sure your program is, a throwback to days where people have to listen, the art of conversation.
That's right.
And with everything going on in our world today,
Correct.
it's very, very hard to sometimes,
is.
not to make the conversation, it's hard to keep sometimes people's interest.
Exactly.
And, you know, all you can do is do the best you can.
That's
you know,
right. And the thing is, we're interested in what's going on with, it's been so nice to meet other artists from other disciplines and find that you have certain things in common with them. Even though you're from different genres, you know, the music versus visual arts or that sort of thing. But I've learned a lot from talking with other artists, and that's really been quite nice.
Yeah, it's the learning experience, plus it's a tremendous networking, you know,
Yes,
opportunity, and
it is.
not only to meet people. Again, in our
Exactly.
case, sometimes it's via, you know, we do some, you know, satellite type of feed where, let's say, if you're in California, oh, Sylvia, come on, and, you know, and we have a chat, and that's good. You know,
Right.
like,
No,
focusing on the
exactly.
guest, get off of me.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
in your case, we just have to make sure that Pamela's elbowing you every 5 minutes. Oh, Sylvia's slipping, and she's starting to doze. You know.
No, we don't have time to doze. You have the luxury of a full hour. We only have 30 minutes to get
My
everything.
goodness, get on, get off. That's it. It's like doing the old Tonight Show. Get on, get off. Make it good. Make it good. Oh my goodness, you're equally comfortable singing jazz standards as well as performing. There was one mention here. Your daddy's son from the musical Ragtime. I did not see the musical. I saw the original film, which I assume it was the majority of it was based on. Where do you, in other words, come up for, let's say, a venue such as the one here where you're photographed? Do you kind of just, people send you ideas, or do you kind of like, you know, usually draw and put together your own programs?
I put together my own programs. They're usually predominantly jazz-based. Like this particular performance was back in, I believe it was October of last year. And it was a jazz set with just a bass player and a pianist. The more recent performance at the Metropolitan Room, which was 2 weeks ago, I had a trio, drums, bass, and piano, and then I brought in the Brazilian guitarist, and then Don Trenner made an appearance.
Wow. It was like they had enough room on the stage, because I was at a club once where all of a sudden, I'm telling you, it was as wide as this, and it was like 5 people, and God help if someone took a step forward or backward,
No, that's
you
very
were
true.
like doing a header.
That's very true. That's very true. And I actually have another performance at the Metropolitan Room in August, and there's going to be included in the jazz set will be a tribute to Stevie Wonder. So we're doing
Nice.
about 5 or 6 Stevie Wonder tunes.
We'll be doing Sir Duke, and I'm trying to think.
Living for the City.
Rhythm in the Sky.
Yeah,
great
Ribbon
thing,
in the
yeah.
Sky,
Oh, Ribbon, I
exactly.
beg your
Yeah,
pardon,
yeah,
yeah.
Ribbon in the Sky. So yeah, I'm incorporating that R&B, but making it more of a jazz flavored.
Now there's a gentleman, and again, big Stevie Wonder fan, but again, he's to get to my point, he's like the Arnold Palmer of singing, in that sports athletes, and Arnold's not just the only one, whether it was too much fame or maybe they got involved in other side projects that eventually dulled their abilities from a sports standpoint. A musician, Stevie went years where he did nothing. I mean, literally years. I mean, from like the late 80s until mid 2000s. Okay, and I'm like, I mean, I don't know if it's burnout or whatever, and he's not the only one, but I mean, there's just examples of, you know, what a shame. I mean, the gift that they have.
You
and-
also have to consider with Stevie has a huge catalog. The amount of music that man has written. In fact, I wasn't aware until I started on this project of just how much music he has written. There are ones that we obviously know, but he's also written for a number of other people that he never recorded. And I actually put something on Facebook asking people to let me know what their favorite Stevie Wonder tunes were. And there were quite a few that I had never even heard of.
Oh, sure.
And so I started to just research and look at these things, and I'm just, wow, this is incredible. So he worked so hard for such a period of time that it would not be surprising if he had nothing more to do.
No, I mean, for 30 years it was like, you know,
Wow.
nonstop. But you know what I'm saying? It just, then you have other people, and I know in some cases they're not writers, or, you know, they may not, you know, arrange their own stuff. But you've got people, again, going back into more the jazz theme, you know, Tony Bennett, who was, you know, out touring with Lady Gaga. I mean, people do like, you know, a triple twist of the neck. They're like, what? You know, they think you're making it up, and I'm like, he's going right till the end.
Yeah, he is. Tony Bennett has to be on the stage, just like Ella Fitzgerald. She was on the stage.
Oh, and even in a wheelchair at
right.
the end. Yeah.
That's because those people, that's where they're most comfortable, is on the stage. And that's what I always tell people, you know, there was a time when I stopped singing altogether. I didn't do any singing just because I wasn't certain where I was going with it. I was, you know, I had people tell me, you're not very good, you're not this. So it got to me, and I took a break. And then I was very unhappy. And I realized that I have to be on the stage to perform because, for one, it makes me happy, but that's my outlet. And that's the way I communicate with people.
Yep. Another one, too, and I would include, even though I have not met the gentleman, although I am writing his name down, who is Don, of course, someone who obviously, Don is at you know, a robust age, and he's just like going and going and going and going.
Don
like
is
Energizer.
89.
Yeah, wow. That's
and
amazing.
he says that this is the Don Turner Renaissance.
Yeah.
Because prior to recording my CD, he had worked with another singer, Shani Rainbow.
Yes.
Then afterwards, after my CD, he worked with B.J. Ward, his ex-wife, and they recorded actually 2 CD projects, and one has already been released. The book is
That's right,
about to
the
come
memoir,
out.
yeah.
The
So,
book.
I mean, he is just a wealth of, no wonder, I believe you did two programs with him. I mean, it just, probably could have done, you know, had him on
Right, no, we
once
plan
a
on
month.
having him on again
Absolutely.
because
It's
there's just
you're
so
just
much.
scratching the surface.
Right, there's just so much that you can talk about with
Another
him.
one, too, again, that would be on the other end of the spectrum from, again, was not a singer, but again, as I'm sure you know, Duke Ellington, right up till the end. You know, writing, you know, almost like religious pieces, you know, sacred, you know, concertos and whatever. I mean, just constantly, you know, expanding, looking for that new, which again is true of many singers, looking for that new outlet or whatever. And,
Right.
you know, and even in the rock genre, Billy Joel, Paul McCartney, they're on and on, where they've delved into classical, and some with better results than others. But the thing is, at least countless others that, you know, have done, you know, a jazzy type of album, you know. But again, as I said before, with a piano player, you know, in this case, Don, there's certain, in my opinion, certain things when they do a song, like a Linda Ronstadt, love her rock stuff. She got together with Nelson Riddle. And again, that was, you know, that's like you working with Don. You're talking, you know, you're talking a quadruple plus, help bring her out, but still, to those of us who know her from her earlier work, it's not, to me, it's okay, but it's not quite there. But then those that have it in the blood, just like a country singer has it, they can delve and do a little of this, a little of that, and it's commendable. But it's, you know.
Right, exactly. Different things for different people.
Yeah.
And Don will have stories about Nelson Riddle as well. So.
There you go. I didn't even read the book yet.
Oh boy, I cannot wait for the book. I cannot wait.
There you go. Terrific. You mentioned in the remaining moments we have Sylvia Mims joining us here on Studio 411, where lovers live, sylviamims.com. Something I saw real quick, love of food, especially Brazilian Portuguese food. I even saw your favorite dessert, which if you're nice to me, I will take you to some lovely bakeries in Connecticut where you can get that lovely little custard.
The pastéis de
there you
nata.
go. Yeah, there you go. I saw that and I said to my wife, I said, looky here. I was actually going to put a photo of that and say, the reaction. Say, oh, it's a plate of the pastéis.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah,
I've had people, they gave that to and I said, no, I'll just have a taste. I'm lucky I had my fingers.
I know. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. No, I love Portuguese food. My husband's from Portugal.
Oh, okay.
And so we go to Portugal every year.
Wow.
And
There's more stories to tell.
I love the food. I love the people. I love the beaches there.
I'm not crazy about the kale or the codfish, so forgive me.
Oh, you're not into
No,
the codfish?
no,
Okay,
no, not at all.
okay,
My
all
mother
right.
used to make the codfish cakes, and I had an aunt who used to go, "Oh my God, I just love her codfish," and I'd tell her, "You can have mine, hon. You can have it." So.
Oh, how
no.
funny! Yeah, I love it all, and the pastéis de nata. Oh,
that's the real deal,
My
yeah.
goodness, yeah,
Yeah.
one of my favorite things. But don't get me wrong, there are tons of other sweets that I
Oh,
love
sure,
from Portugal, and hopefully, I think it's September. September, I'm going back to Portugal,
there,
so
yeah.
I'll get my pastel de nata and my little almond cookies and.
I went there when I was 7, so again.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
6 weeks, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So I remember a lot, but I'm just saying.
it's time to return.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're working on it. You know, the wife wants to go to the Algarve. So
Yeah,
I
that's
said-
where we go.
So I said, yeah, well, we're saving our bottles and cans. She goes, yeah, well, I don't want to be 80 when I do it. I said, well, I'll push you in the wheelchair. Yeah. It might be a little tough on the sand, but you know. So,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
but we'll get there,
That's
honey.
so
Don't worry
funny.
about it.
No,
Don't
highly
worry about it.
recommend the Algarve.
Absolutely,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Definitely.
There's one of your promo shots that we see quite a bit, and again,
Yep.
you were doing a lot of gigs in the area, and as I said again, SylviaMims.com for all the good stuff there, and just lovely. This is a gentleman you were telling me off air from
Yes, the
Philadelphia.
gentleman from Philadelphia did
Yeah.
all the photographs.
So you see,
that
like
are
how you
part of the
acquire
story.
all these like little nuggets. You've got like mentors. You've got co-hosts that keep you awake. You've got photographers that are just just again just the aces in the hole.
Yeah, exactly. No, this was really a wonderful session, and everyone seems to like this photo, so this is the one I keep
Yeah.
using to promote.
And in 5, 10, 15 years ago, you probably just keep doing the the local gigs or whatever. And there are a few even new jazz clubs in the Connecticut area too, which is great. But
Yeah, especially up this way. I live in Stamford,
Yeah.
so down there, everyone's concerned
Yeah.
with other types of things, and they usually go into the city for their entertainment.
Yeah.
But up this way, there's
a couple
some
of good ones on the shoreline.
there's some
yeah.
wonderful musicians up here.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful musicians. In fact, I'll be performing. I have a few gigs lined up in the area.
Well, SylviaMims.com, and we'll be certainly keeping my eyes peeled and getting in touch with Don Trenner. Sylvia Mims, Where Lovers Live. Sylvia, a pleasure to have you on
Thank
the
you so
program.
much,
Best
Larry.
of luck,
My
continued
pleasure.
luck with not only your career but also the radio show.
I appreciate that.
And
Thank you.
we have come to the end of another edition of Studio 411, and we are so grateful that all these terrific guests that we are fortunate enough to bring to you, and that they make the trek down here, or again via satellite. So again, Where Lovers Live, Sylvia Mims. We will catch you again on another episode of Studio 411. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.